From the moment Elizabeth Taylor stepped in front of a camera, the spotlight never left her. She was barely a child when Hollywood embraced her, a bright-eyed girl with an uncanny ability to captivate audiences. But unlike many child stars who fade into obscurity, Taylor transitioned effortlessly into one of the most celebrated actresses of the 1950s, reigning supreme well into the 1960s. Decades later, the American Film Institute cemented her legacy by naming her the seventh greatest female screen legend of all time. Yet Taylor was never a conventional symbol of allure. Unlike Marilyn Monroe, who embodied the curvaceous ideal of the 1940s pin-up era, or Brigitte Bardot, who ushered in the unapologetic sensuality of the 1960s, Taylor defied categorization. If a sex symbol is merely a projection of society's collective desires, then she resisted that mold entirely. She was too forthright, too self-directed, too determined to chase her own passions rather than reflect the fantasies of others. So let's explore the phenomenon of Elizabeth Taylor. Before we start, please support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons. Taylor was born into the studio system, making her screen debut at just 10 years old during the golden age of Hollywood. But she was never confined by it. Unlike the generation before her, stars whose careers and images were tightly controlled by the studios, Taylor transcended the system that made her famous. She not only survived Hollywood's seismic shift in the 1960s as the old studio model crumbled, but she emerged as both its last great star and its first true icon of independence. In 1963, she became the first actress to earn $1 million paycheck for Cleopatra, a figure that symbolized more than just financial success. Taylor had become emblematic of a new era, one of female empowerment, of sexual liberation, of a Hollywood no longer dictated by rigid studio contracts. And yet, paradoxically, she remained a vestige of the past, a figure of old Hollywood grandeur, the kind of movie star whose mere presence commanded attention. Some actresses rivaled her in beauty, Garbo for mystery, Hayworth for seduction. Others had the same rebellious streak: Bankhead's devil-may-care attitude, Hepburn's defiance of convention. But no one embodied both sides as seamlessly as Taylor. She was a woman of contradictions, glamorous yet unpretentious, hardworking yet hedonistic, an untouchable star who also lived her life in the most public of ways. The famed gossip columnist Liz Smith summed it up best. Taylor captivated audiences not just with her beauty or talent, but with her vulgarity, her arrogance, and her money. She was a monarch and a rebel all at once, a woman who rewrote the rules and became an icon to icons. Few stars have left a cultural imprint as deep as Elizabeth Taylor. Michael Jackson, one of her closest friends, was so enthralled by her that he subtly reshaped his own features in homage to her beauty. He cast her in his 1989 "Leave Me Alone" music video, which mocked the relentless tabloid scrutiny that had defined both their lives. Within the surreal, carnival-like imagery, Taylor became something more than a co-star. She was the very embodiment of celebrity itself. Andy Warhol, the master of pop art, also immortalized Taylor, treating her not unlike his famed Campbell's soup cans, a cultural artifact, instantly recognizable and loaded with meaning. His 1963 silkscreen portrait, Liz, remains one of his most celebrated works, a visual testament to Taylor's status as a symbol of an era. Decades later, the painting sold for an astonishing £11.4 million, proving that her allure had not faded. Taylor's personal milestones were inseparable from her Hollywood firsts. She shared her first kiss on screen only a week after her first real one, and in one of her earliest roles, played the wife of a much older man, 2 years before she would wed for the first time in real life. Yet beneath the mythos of her beauty and marriages lay an undeniable work ethic. When a director told her she was too short for a role, she took the criticism literally. She stretched herself, ate steak at every meal, and insisted she grew 3 inches in 3 months to secure the lead in The Courage of Lassie. She was 13 at the time, and while her growth spurt may have been inevitable, the story she told about it was pure Taylor, a narrative in which sheer willpower bent reality to her favor. That ability to shape her own life story, to turn obstacles into legends, was part of what made Taylor so singular. She wasn't just a movie star. She was the last of a dying breed, the final embodiment of old Hollywood glamour, and the first to forge a path toward modern celebrity. Even in an industry that constantly moves forward, her legacy endures. Because while other stars were admired, Elizabeth Taylor was unforgettable. By the time Elizabeth Taylor turned 26, she had already lived through more heartbreak and scandal than most endure in a lifetime. She had been married 3 times, divorced twice, and widowed once. Some claimed her ideals of love were shaped by Hollywood itself, by the grand, sweeping romances and the improbable happy endings that played out on soundstages. If that were true, then her tumultuous love life served as a public counterpoint, a stark reminder that real love bore little resemblance to the silver screen's fantasies. Her first marriage, to Conrad Nicky Hilton, ended in cruelty. Few at the time knew that he had beaten her, left her emotionally and physically unfulfilled. The men who followed, British actor Michael Wilding, tempestuous producer Mike Todd, scandalous singer Eddie Fisher, each brought their own brand of passion and discontent. Todd, the one often remembered as her great love, had a dynamic, almost paternal presence. Yet, in a 1957 TV interview, Taylor appeared almost childlike beside him. When he died in a tragic plane crash, she emerged from sedation in the arms of his best friend, who also happened to be married. The public was scandalized. She was branded a scarlet woman, vilified for upending the marriage of America's sweetheart, Debbie Reynolds. But the world was changing. By 1959, love and loyalty were no longer so neatly defined. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton's love affair was one of Hollywood's most intoxicating romances. Passionate, extravagant, and scandalous. Their relationship ignited on the set of Cleopatra in 1962, where their on-screen chemistry spilled into real life, much to the dismay of their respective spouses. The Vatican even condemned Taylor for erotic vagrancy, a testament to the moral outrage their affair sparked. Yet, despite the controversy, their love burned brightly, leading to 2 marriages, 2 divorces, and an insatiable appetite for luxury, including the most jaw-dropping jewels ever gifted. Their love story was as tempestuous as it was dazzling, with arguments as fiery as the diamonds Burton lavished upon Taylor. Among the most legendary was the 69.42-carat Taylor Burton diamond, a pear-shaped masterpiece that redefined Hollywood opulence. When Burton acquired it for over $1 million in 1969, the world gasped. Taylor had turned jewelry into high drama. She wore it with theatrical flair, once donning it as a headpiece, proving that for this couple, excess was never enough. Their relationship, riddled with intense devotion and equally intense clashes, kept the tabloids enthralled, making them the ultimate celebrity power couple. Even after their second divorce in 1976, Taylor and Burton remained linked by an undeniable gravitational pull. Rumors of reconciliation swirled when they reunited for a stage production in 1983, but their love had evolved into a bittersweet legend. Burton's untimely passing in 1984 sealed their story in Hollywood history, leaving behind a legacy of scandal, spectacle, and diamonds fit for a queen. Taylor would later reflect that, despite their tumultuous relationship, Burton was the great love of her life. A sentiment that only added to the myth of their intoxicating, jewel-studded romance. As the years passed, Taylor's personal life became less a love story and more a spectacle. Sometimes tragic, sometimes absurd. She moved in circles of unimaginable wealth and power, cavorting with the ostentatious publisher Malcolm Forbes before marrying her seventh and final husband, Larry Fortensky, a construction worker she met in rehab. Their wedding, hosted at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, was a surreal media frenzy. Helicopters circled overhead. Taylor and Jackson had formed an unlikely but profound bond, two wounded souls who had been denied childhoods of their own. Both had turned to excess, drugs, jewelry, compulsive spending, to fill the void. She nurtured him like a protective sister. He fed her insatiable love for diamonds. Theirs was a friendship born not of convenience, but of deep, shared wounds. Later in life, Taylor found herself single for the first time in decades. She was older, wiser, and thanks to Hollywood's relentless cycle of objectification, no longer viewed as a commodity. But instead of fading into quiet obscurity, she reinvented herself once again, this time as an activist. The AIDS crisis had already claimed tens of thousands of lives by the time Rock Hudson, her dear friend and former co-star, publicly revealed his diagnosis in 1985. The Reagan administration had yet to acknowledge the epidemic, treating it as a problem belonging to a politically undesirable community. But Taylor, who had long surrounded herself with gay men, Roddy McDowall, Montgomery Clift, Hudson, understood their struggle firsthand. These were the friends who had loved her not for her beauty or fame, but for herself. When the world turned its back on them, she refused to do the same. She shed the trappings of Hollywood and threw herself into advocacy, using her global fame as a weapon against the government's indifference and the medical system's negligence. "We owe our fellow man a certain responsibility," she declared, becoming one of the most vocal and effective AIDS activists of her time. Taylor's later years were marked by declining health, but even frailty could not diminish the towering myth she had built. Though confined to a wheelchair, suffering from years of medical ailments, she remained, in the public imagination, the luminous force she had always been. She entered hospitals draped in diamonds, her sunglasses shielding her from the world's pity. Even in her most vulnerable moments, she refused to relinquish control of her own image. She had spent a lifetime defying convention, living boldly, unapologetically. Elizabeth Taylor was never just an actress, nor merely a beautiful woman. She was a force of nature, an icon of excess, resilience, and defiance. The final great movie star, the woman against whom all others would be measured. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons.